If you've got a mobile, can you either turn it off or put it on mute, please? Really helpful. And remind you all that if you do wish to speak, that you speak clearly into the microphone because they are a bit directional. And remember, of course, we're now online. So I've got apologies. I've got 2 apologies, 3 actually. I've got Councillor David Walsh, who's standing in for me outside Dorset today. Byron Quayle's got family issues he's dealing with, so he can't be here, unfortunately. And Matt Prosser, who's got some urgent business that cropped up this morning, which prevents him being with us. I don't think there are any others. Are there, Kate? No? Okay. Minutes of the last meeting, 28th of March, I believe. Can I sign those as a true record? I'll take silence as a yes. Declarations of interest. Any colleagues got any interests they want to refer to? Okay. Public participation. There aren't any public questions today. So we'll move on to agenda item 5, which is questions from members. And we have 2 questions today. The first one from Councillor John Orrell. John.
Thank you, Chair. So the question's all about car parking. You can see the question in full, but it's really a question of fairness, is why the car parking for some of the seaside towns has to be so expensive when it's not expensive in some of the more prosperous market towns. I think it's a matter of social justice that it should be the same across Dorset, so that people in prosperous towns pay the same as people in deprived towns, and it's hitting some of my poorer residents and their businesses. So I'd like the council to change its policy and have a unified pricing structure across Dorset.
Thank you very much. I'll invite Councillor Ray Bryan to respond, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Thank you, John, for the Councillor Orrell for the question. My name is Councillor Ray Bryan. I'm the portfolio holder for Highways, Travel and Environment, which includes the harbours and climate change. Our market towns, who may argue with the term prosperous, do not have the increased footfall that the coastal towns benefit from. They rely on business from local residents only and a few visitors. Due to the social demographic of Weymouth, some car parks have been kept at the same tariff as the market towns. That was done for the local people to pay less when they're parking in Weymouth. Social deprivation is not a protected characteristic. However, an EQIA was completed before the implementation of the permits, and no protected characteristic was identified as being at disadvantage from the permit, including Dorset Council's area of deprivation. The previous season tickets for Weymouth car parks were annually £546 and £325 respectively, and neither had the option to pay monthly, and the lowest cost was £81.25 per quarter. The Flexi Stay permit that was introduced last year by Dorset Council to help local residents is £260 a year and can be paid monthly at £25 per payment. We are investigating the option of whether the short stay permit of £78 could be collected quarterly, which would work out at £1.50 per week per resident. The increase in level 3 car park charges builds on the alignment that was brought in previously. The 3-level charging structure remains. However, there is now focus on tourist destinations. Thus, in Weymouth, there is a higher tariff in Pavilion, Swannery, Melcombe Regis, Park Street, Lodmore and Beach car parks to protect the local residents from the higher tariff. The Noath Council offices, Governor's Lane, Cousins Quay and the Royal Yard car parks remain at level 2 tariff. This is the same tariff as our market towns such as Dorchester, Wareham and Wimborne. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ray. Okay. Right, the second question's from Councillor Paul Kimber.
Thank you, Chair, fellow councillors. I ask this question because there is a small group of councillors that are particularly interested in promoting cycling and walking in this council, and particularly, I know where I live on Portland, there's a phenomenal amount of cyclists that cycle over every day. My question is, Chair, cycling and walking targets to be missed. A National Audit Office report has found that the government is likely to miss the targets to increase walking and cycling in a bid to reduce emissions to reach net zero by 2050. Despite investing heavily in the sector, the LGA Transport spokesman, Councillor Linda Taylor, said councils have been in the forefront of active travel schemes, but added that they can only continue to do this in the long term, certainly for the vital local projects that help cut congestion and make our air cleaner, and called on the government to urgently restore much needed £200 million funding to councils' budgets to this projects. Councillor Taylor said this will allow councillors to plan a pipeline of active travel infrastructure investments, engage more effectively with local communities and invest in necessary skills and the capacity for their own staff. My question is, I would like to request, are we in Dorset behind in our cycling and walking targets as suggested by the National Audit Office, and are we planning effectively with local communities? Thank you.
Invite Councillor Ray Bryan to respond, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Kimber, for the question. It highlights some of the great work this council is doing on the cycling and walking and active travel programme. The government's target for walking and cycling are laid out in the Cycling and Walking Investment Strategy 2 in the period up to 2025. They relate to percentage increases of short journeys in towns and cities by walking and cycling, overall increases in walking and cycling trips, and percentage increase in children walking to school. Beyond 2025, further objectives reflect commitments originally set out in Gear Change, the Transport Decarbonisation Plan and the Net Zero Strategy to increase the percentage of short journeys in towns and cities and deliver a world-class cycling and walking network in England by 2040. The government's objectives are focused on achieving model shift in urban areas, and it should be remembered that almost half of Dorset Council's population live in rural locations. Whilst Dorset Council works towards the government's target, it should be noted that these are national targets, and the authority does not have the means to measure precisely against these identical objectives. Dorset Council Transport's objectives are set out in the third local transport plan currently under review. This did not specify detailed target for growth in walking or cycling, but instead, alongside the objectives, set goals and performance indicators. These performance indicators align somewhat with the government's objectives above and include single occupant car trips, pupils travelling to school by car, and growth in cycling trips. As I said at the original part of my statement, this council is delivering extremely well on our plans, and I look forward to be able to report further activities over the coming period. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Ray. Right, we move on then to agenda item 6, which is the forward plan. We say it's an iterative document, and it is. And I'm aware that there are a number of reports coming in July, and also they're not on here yet, but I am aware there's a few additional reports that will come in September. And I think I'm right in saying that this will be updated on the 27th of June to reflect on that. But what we've got in front of us is, as I say, the latest edition. Are you all content to note? I'll take silence as a yes. Okay, right. Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 7, the the Council Plan Annual Report, and I'm going to hand over to Councillor Jill Haynes.
Is it working? Yes, please. Good morning, everybody. I'm Councillor Jill Haynes. I have the portfolio for corporate development and transformation. This paper, I make no apologies about, is quite a lengthy report, is a reflection of the detailed work of this council. I'd like to start by thanking David Bonner and his team for the immense amount of work they put in to provide us with the accurate business intelligence that's in the report. This allows us not only to monitor our progress, but also provides us vital data for future decision-making. The Dorset Council Plan describes the priority of the council. It reflects residents' priorities and a commitment to deliver high-quality services and deliver strong outcomes in Dorset. The council is a complex organisation delivering a multitude of services that are important to our residents. Ensuring that its priorities are clearly articulated and then progress is reported is an important element of our performance framework. The Dorset Council Plan was refreshed in 2022 to ensure it reflected the highest priorities for residents, especially following the COVID-19 pandemic. Council Plan was reviewed and amended last October, and for the first time a delivery plan was made a public document. This report provides a progress update on the Council's performance and delivery of that plan. At the time I said the delivery plan would be a work in progress, and it would inevitably change and flex as our circumstances do. The report provides a summary of these amendments to the delivery plan at Appendix A. I'm going to just bring out some of the highlights. We've got an awful lot of good news going on. We've also still got some challenges. So we have 5 council priorities which form the basis of our plan, and I will try to bring out a flavour of the positives and challenges in each area. The Protecting Our Natural Environment and Climate and Ecology priority outlines our ambitions to support Dorset's environment in a sustainable way which protects it for future generations. This commits us to taking direct action across our operations to become carbon neutral by 2040. So in that area, we now have some really good news. The proportion of waste sent for reuse, recycling or composting remained very high in Dorset throughout last year. This level of performance has seen Dorset ranked highly against other councils in England. In addition, less than 5% of waste was sent to landfill, meeting the council's target. And for this commitment to recycling, we must thank our residents. The 19 million Salix programme, which is aimed at accelerating the decarbonation of carbon buildings, is nearing completion, with over 200 buildings receiving measures, including 5 megawatt solar panels, heat pumps, and a range of other measures that have reduced the carbon emissions on council buildings by 20%. Significant external funds have been sourced, including over £4 million for the Homes Upgrade Grant and around £1 million for the 2 Prosperity Funds and over £5.5 million for electric vehicle infrastructure. Projects completed within the Low Carbon Dorset programme delivered a savings of a total of 9,626 tonnes of CO2 in 22. We're expecting this to have risen by at least a further 500 tonnes when we have the figures in for the end of last year, financial year that is. Creating stronger, healthy communities priority sets out our ambition to enable our residents, working with partners, to develop strong networks of support and maintain strong communities. We have to focus on the most vulnerable in our communities to improve well-being and reduce inequality through collaboration between public services, residents and voluntary groups. Improving the outcomes for children and young people has such a long-lasting impact for health and well-being and economic growth of the county that is essential in this area. We have performed well in supporting our younger adults with a learning disability to live independently or at home with their families, therefore ensuring that they achieve the best possible outcomes in their day-to-day lives. The newly formed Care Dorset is showing positive impacts in our reablement provision, maintaining people's independence, and there will be further updates on what's happening in adult social care in papers later on today. The number of working age adults with a learning disability in paid employment continues to be a challenge. However, we've seen increasing numbers of individuals with mental health conditions in paid employment. A different focus on improving outcomes for these people should see an improvement in this area in the year 23-24. Ongoing demand in respect of hospital discharge is placing continued pressures on adult social care, and our permanent placements into residential and nursing care homes have exceeded the target. However, our focus on Home First and reablement should see this position improve during the next year. We have seen a positive increase in the number of children supported within early help over the last year, some 1,390 at the end of March, indicating that we're supporting more families at an earlier stage. A good gauge for success in social care intervention is a low percentage of people coming back into the system within 12 months of a previous referral to social care. In this area, we've performed consistently strongly with this indicator over the last 12 months and well within range of a target of under 20%. We continue to support a high number and rate of children in need in Dorset. Increases in complex referrals have led to an increase in the children assessed as requiring statutory support. The Harbour Service has been launched and is delivering outreach and residential provision for younger people, and this continues to provide an effective approach for supporting young people to remain in the care of their families through the delivery of outreach. We have secured funding for children's services through some successful national bids to help us do more locally, including family hubs, supporting young people in residential care to stay close to their residential care provision, and support of workforce development, and our strategy of reducing parental conflict. Finally, in this area, the library strategy has been developed over 2 phases of consultation. Over 12,500 survey responses have been received. 21 engagement workshops were engaged. 21 engagement workshops were undertaken, and the strategy and action plan has been refined as a result, and this will be presented for sign-off at the next Cabinet. The Creating Sustainability, Development and Housing priority outlines our ambitions to work with government, registered housing providers and community land trusts and local housing partners to deliver affordable, suitable, decent housing. The number of households in B&B continues to be higher than desired, running at about 129 last March, compared to 100 for the same period the previous year. Demands in the service in respect of homeless cases are increasing, as are the complexity of cases. The cost of living crisis and ongoing interest rate increases are a significant factor. There has been progress in the prevention of homelessness, which has led to the number of households in B&B accommodation not rising, despite a significant rise of over 31% in the number of people presenting as about to be homeless. We are projecting the delivery of 611 affordable homes in the Dorset area for the last year, and have also seen an increase in the completion of shared ownership property. More funding is being made available to support low-cost home ownership. There has been a significant progress towards our target for sustainable homes to be built in the year. Forecasts show that 450 affordable homes have been built by the end of March 23, exceeding the original target of 400. The Driving Economic Prosperity priority outlines our ambitions to support sustainable economic growth across the county, enabling high-quality jobs throughout improvements to productivity, sustainability and accessibility, creating great places to live, work and visit. And during the first year of the refreshed council plan, the national landscape was shifting and regional policy is being amended by the soon, hopefully, to come through Levelling Up agenda and bill. Our unemployment rate is down at 1.7%, a fall from 4.4 last year, but follows the pattern across the country. Despite this, the following 2 indicators show why the cost of living crisis has hit so hard here in Dorset. Our average weekly earnings for full-time jobs in Dorset in 22 was £579, up admittedly from the previous year, which was £549. But this compares to the England National, national average at 646. Coupled with this, our house prices to residence-based earnings ratio is at 11 times. This was the highest ratio on record, and compares to 9 times in the southwest and 8 times in England. There has been good progress in this area of work, defined by 4 completed activities. The Levelling Up Fund of 19.5 million has been secured, the completion of the 5G Rural Dorset programme, superfast connectivity expanded by working with BD UK, and ultrafast connectivity maximised across Dorset utilising grant funding. A commercial development, Quadrant 2 at the Business Park, is in progress with contractors approved to start this year, and this will provide additional facilities for sector investment and lead to new job opportunities in the county. The Shared Prosperity Fund is providing Dorset with £6 million over 3 years for skills development. An investment plan has been developed from September 22, and work to provide additional numeracy skills and support to adults is underway. And then finally, becoming a more responsive and customer-focused council covers a wide breadth of our organisation, with a focus on how we work as one council to deliver effective value for money services for our customers and for our organisation. The scope includes how our customers contact us, customer engagement, our way of operating, digital, technology, accessibility, data intelligence, and records building in our communities, our employee organisational development strategy, and our financial model. It's quite a list. The launch of our Future Dorset, Future Council programme, working with local partners, is a positive step towards bringing the direction needed for a future ways of working for the organisation. However, as an organisation, we are not waiting for the accelerating customer transformation work to commence, and in-progress activity is already commencing. So our customer satisfaction surveys across many of our services have maintained excellent levels of satisfaction. We have published a data and business intelligence strategy as approved by Cabinet in February of this year. We are working to enhance our commissioning activity through effective market shaping so that we can meet the need in the most cost-effective way. This commercial approach is set out in the commercial strategy approved by Cabinet. A new approach working with the Dorset ICS will support activity to better engage with customers, and this is focused on in-depth qualitative engagement. The Equality and Diversity and Inclusion Strategy and Refreshed Action Plan is being implemented, and this work includes a network which is providing opportunities for customer collaboration and problem-solving ways to remove barriers to accessibility. We are working on a new asset management strategy, rationalising our property, co-locating services, and developing our commercial approach to property, and this is due to be completed by the end of this year. So that's just a snapshot of the very many things that are happening at the Council, much of which is very positive indeed, and shows the breadth of our complex organisation. There are still considerable challenges taking into account our financial situation. We will need to be more flexible and be more fleet of foot when dealing with change, but nonetheless, this achievement is something to be proud of. None of it would have been possible without the commitment and drive of our hard-working staff, who I'd like to thank personally for all their efforts. And the recommendation is to note progress against the details of the refreshed plan. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Jill. I'll take that as you're proposing the report. I will seek a seconder before I open it up. Laura, thank you. Comments from colleagues? Not on the Cabinet, any comments? It's a very comprehensive report, and thank you very much to Jill for spending the time taking us through it. Paul Kimber.
Thank you, Jill, and fellow councillors. This is a lot of work to actually produce this report, and I certainly welcome that we start this report and a lot of things that Jill said today. But I still have that very deep concern within areas facing deprivation about the affordability of getting homes and getting your foot on the ladder, like all of us had to once upon a time. And I just hope that I realise that we're up against quite a mountain on that point. And I just hope that this council can really take into consideration, some of the poorest in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Point well made, actually. Do you want to come back, Jill?
Thank you, Paul. I think that this is something that everybody in the council is concerned about, and that is one of the reasons why the leader has asked for this housing strategy to come forward to the September Cabinet. And I think you'll see a lot more in that report, which will show our commitment to providing those homes for Dorset.
Right. No, I can't see anybody else indicating. So we've got a proposal and it's been seconded. Does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations set out in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Move on to agenda item 8, draft outturn, and I'll turn to Councillor Gary Suttle.
Okay. Good morning. Gary Suttle, Finance Portfolio Holder, also Deputy Leader, a position which comes with this incredibly uncomfortable throne. Right. Present the draft outturn report for 22-23. It was, to say the least, an interesting year from a finance point of view. I think that I'd describe the variances experienced in each directorate as a roller coaster of savings and unexpected costs. At certain points in the year, the overall outturn looked much higher, but we've learnt the most important lessons, and those are to be agile and to adapt budgets reacting quickly and decisively. With inflation at over 10%, with our hands very much tied for raising funds, this outturn demonstrates the abilities and underlines the strong financial team we have the privilege of working with here at Dorset Council. We have once again defied expectations and brought the annual outturn to within 0.5% of the overall annual budget. We've also increased the general fund. The report details the outturn of each directorate and gives far more information regarding each of their own problems, wins and losses. But this is now history, and we turn our attention to the coming budget setting process, and we already know we're tackling significant problems, and currently they look to be increasing. This year we'll see a slightly different approach to setting the budget, and I very much look forward to working with other members to set what will be our last budget, but the legacy for those that follow and the basis of a new council period. Its importance for Dorset cannot be understated. The report details 2 recommendations on the front page, although in reality these do not require Cabinet approval. They remain of the utmost importance to the coming budget process, and I ask you to note the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Before I open it up, I have a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Simon Gibson. Comments? Brian Heatley.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brian Heatley from Rodwell and Wyke in Weymouth. First of all, I'd like to endorse an awful lot of what Councillor Suttle has said. A 1.7 million overspend in the circumstances of the inflation we have faced is a pretty remarkable outturn. It's right on the button. And those of us who 18 months ago were saying you're not taking inflation seriously enough, I think perhaps we need to reflect a little on whether we were right about that. Maybe we weren't. The achievement on the adults and children's budgets in particular is remarkably good given our history. We seem to have had a very good collection of council tax, and it's also good to see the capital spending and the budget come into a much closer alignment. I think most of the change there is on the budget rather than on the spending, but the previous position seemed to me to be unsupportable. And so all of those are very good things. I'm going to want to talk about, however, my obsession from last February, which is the earmarked reserves. On page 87, there is a table showing what it is expected to happen to the earmarked reserves of this council between March 22 and March 27. There is a massive decline in the total in earmarked reserves from 158 million down to 40 million. If it goes on at that rate, 2 years later, there'd be nothing left. Now, there's a wonderful sentence at the beginning of that paragraph that says this is somehow explained by the outturn position. I don't think it is. I'd like to know what's going on here. Why do you expect our earmarked reserves to decline so massively? What's behind it? They're not turning into general reserves, the table tells that, so they're being spent somehow. What's going on? Thank you.
Well, thank you for the first part of the preamble, which was extremely supportive. However, the earmarked reserves, as you can see, I haven't actually got pages, but I assume you're talking to item 11 in the report, 11.3, the table below. If you'd looked at that 2 years ago, you would have seen that it would have bottomed out earlier. And what we're doing by prudent financial management is pushing that down the line, if you like. And I'll just come back to what I keep saying about Dorset, that we remain underfunded. And that is a problem that is going to continue on until something's done about it. You're looking at 5 years here. I think I've said consistently between 20 and 30 million of an issue. Let's take that, and that's probably why you find that 157 will turn out to be 40. Until such time as that's sorted out by, obviously now, those who come after, it will remain a problem. I mean, I don't know if you want to be more technical, chaps. Do you have any comments you want to make? Aidan?
Thank you. Yes, if I could make a couple of comments. So I'm Aidan Dunn, Chief Finance Officer. I think just, so reserves are, in many ways, it's about risk management. So I'll just draw out a couple of themes from this table. The top line, general fund reserve. So this is the really, the crucial one for us, which is how much do we set aside for all these risks that may or may not materialise. And what we've always set as our strategy is about 10% of our turnover as an organisation. So I think we should, first of all, sort of take a degree of comfort that actually we're anticipating that the size of the organisation will grow gradually, and we're budgeting or planning from a reserves management perspective to maintain that 10% safety level. I think the reserves below the line, below that top line, are for a variety of uses, and some of them are specifically earmarked for things that will happen during the course of the timetable that we've got over the next 5 years. So money that's set aside for things, events that are likely to happen. Indeed, some of what will be coming out in the wash is funding that, still the legacy of funding that we've received, for example, through COVID, that we still need to return to government. So that sort of element releasing. I think a third point to make is that reserves have come under the national spotlight recently, and there's been a lot of work done by government looking at local authority reserves. And we, in terms of sharing this level of information with government, it's not a degree of concern for government. We're sort of in the pack in that regard, and hopefully we can take a degree of comfort from that. But finally, I come back to Councillor Suttle's point that we are concerned about our future financing. This is the picture based on our existing plans. What we know is that as we go through on a year-by-year basis, we refine those plans. We look at ways of improving our efficiency as an organisation, looking for service efficiencies, and that helps close our budget gap so we no longer have to rely on reserves. So At one level, a worrying picture in terms of the earmark reserves, but the crucial element is the general fund reserve, the top line, and we can see that we should take a degree of comfort that that's planned to grow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aidan. Thank you for the question, Brian. David Gray.
Hope you can hear me now. Thank you, Chair. Councillor David Gray, Raleigh Park, Weymouth. I echo Councillor Heatley's compliments about the outturn, but my question, I'm sorry I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit, Gary. Given the context of a 1.6 million deficit, which is really small, can Councillor Brian comment on the shortfall in the 2.4 million car parking revenue shortfall and the reasons why he thinks there is a shortfall? That's my first question. I've got two others. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not. What are you actually asking? Why is the car park revenue short? Sorry.
Well, I was reflecting on the fact that it is a good result, 1.6 given inflation, but we seem to have had a massive shortfall in car parks. And while it's minor, I'd like to know the reason. I mean, I have my own views. I've done a bit of research, so I'm interested to know whether Dorset Council knows why it's got a £2.4 million shortfall, and I may have a follow-up question depending on the answer.
Okay, so we're looking at 22-23, and I'm sure my colleague, Councillor Brian, may have a comment he may wish to make. However, as you will be aware, this is the year where a lot of the car parking machines didn't work, where we had enormous shortfalls of expectations. That is why we've commissioned new car parking machines. I have to say that they are still impacting on this year because the process of putting them in is slower than we'd anticipated. So you're not actually seeing the higher car parking fees come in as quickly. There was some discussion about moving one of the Weymouth car parks over to the Harbour Commission, and although we have taken that into account, that does account for a small amount of money. But overall, it's a logistical issue. Councillor Brian, did you want to add at all to that?
Yes, thank you. A couple of items that I would highlight. When we set the budget, we were going with a £15 charge in the main car parks in Weymouth. The decision was made to reduce that down to 10, but that was after the budget was set. We were also going with evening charges at full council. This was decided against. These holes were always left in the budget because the budget had been set. We've always been trying to be in catch-up mode, and it's been proven that we needed to go with that £15 at an early stage, and then we wouldn't be facing this shortfall. Councillor Sutler is absolutely right. Not only did we have a lot of machines that weren't working and we couldn't get the parts for, these were inherited from the previous councils, not ones that we dealt with. So it's a previous council issue, but I'm not ducking the issue. We were actually pirating units that we took out or cannibalising them, should I say, to try and get the spare parts. We kept some machines going. We tried to make sure there was at least one machine in every car park working, which we achieved in the main. But of course, the other issue is that we lost a lot of money out the machines. We also lost the machines because they were cut off at the bottom, thrown in the back of a truck along with our money. It's difficult to work out how much money we lost in that way, but it became a bit of an illness during this period. And as I say, we've taken care of it by installing new machines. which are giving me fabulous data on a daily basis, which we're now able to look at to create the path going forward. Unfortunately, if you put all those together, it will pretty well cover the difference in the budget numbers. It's something I'm not happy about, far from it. I like to come in on budget, but it was taken out of my control, so we have to live with what we've got.
You got another question, David?
Yes, back to the normal finance. I'm going to talk a little bit, ask a question about debt management. I mean, we're facing, I've added it up through the paper, £47 million worth of debt. I note that we've asked SWAP to look at maybe aligning the debt management process across the council, but I'm sitting here reflecting on the fact that 47 million is quite a number. And is it not time, I realise the economic times we're in, but is it not time to look at a new process and or increase the bad debt reserve or because it seems to be growing. I mean, the 365 age debt is only come down slightly from last year. And the rest, 6.8 million in business rate debt, 7.3 historically. So 47 million overall is quite a number. And I think we need to see a new process and we need to see more activity in this area. So I'm asked the question, can we do that? Thank you.
Thank you. During the year, we in fact discussed possibility of either maybe selling the debt or considering bringing other people in to try and reduce it. I believe at the moment we are considering how we're going to deal with the debt. But of course, some of this is also to do with the fact that the courts were shut for a significant period of time. We were unable to force collection, and now that process has got back on course, and I would hope to see a reduction in it. Aidan, I don't know if you'd like to comment.
Thanks. Yeah, and to follow on from Councillor Gray's point about is there a different process we can follow within the council, that's certainly something that we're looking at. We've got a piece of transformation work called the Future Council, the customer transformation work, and that's one of the early areas that we're looking to explore. Is there a more efficient way for us to be organised to collect that debt? But not least, as Councillor Suttle has said, some of this is about the courts coming back online. You know, there's a little bit of COVID legacy here as well.
Simon Christopher.
This is a question for the finance portfolio holder. Will the finance portfolio holder continue his reading of the government report, Unleashing Rural Potential? The report, which has been issued since the last cabinet meeting, is, I believe, something that will assist in broadening our council tax and indeed our business rates base. Just to remind people that this report adopts many things that business organisations have been desiring: a fully connected countryside, a planning system designed for rural communities, profitable and sustainable farming, investment in skills and innovation, and a simpler tax regime. Will the portfolio holder join with me in discussing this report with government ministers to aid the people of Dorset in providing good quality employment? Thank you, portfolio holder.
Thank you, Councillor Christopher. Yep. No, in fairness, my response is I'm afraid I haven't read this report, and I will read it, and I will give you a written response. Thank you.
Just to reassure you, portfolio holder, I'll be in the House of Commons discussing this tomorrow.
Okay, right. Thank you, Simon. Let's move on. I don't see anybody else signalling. Right, Cabinet colleagues. We've got a recommendation. It's been moved and seconded. Any comments? So does any member disagree with the recommendations in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. So we now move on to agenda item 9, the Transformation Annual Report. Councillor Jill Haynes.
Here we go. Try and be a bit quicker this time, sorry. So this is the third paper in a suite of papers which has given us an overview of activity and spend for the council in the previous year. While it's important to understand our performance, which I described in my previous paper, this paper focuses on the transformation spend and return for that. For Dorset Council, this means fundamentally changing the way we deliver our services and the way we operate to achieve our council's priorities within our financial constraints. Vital to success in this area is approaching this as a whole system change. This will allow us to flex and adapt to the needs of our residents in future. Dorset Council is currently delivering a 5-year transformation plan, which, despite the recent challenges of COVID and the cost of living crisis, has maintained a focus on improving services for customers and achieving long-term financial stability. Some of that has already been shown by the way that the budget came in last year. The work has delivered £13.6 million worth of savings over the first 2 years. We have spent 10.8 from the Council's Invest to Save Fund to allocate to the programme across the years. To realise transformation savings, realise transformation savings of at least 31 million, although originally we projected 33 million, over the 5-year period 21 to 26, and, however, exceeds the anticipated savings from reorganisation when we first started this council and moved to a unitary. The transformation process is a learning curve for us all, and in the first year we certainly underestimated some timescales and the amount of human resource needed to effect change. And this is reflected in the slippage savings in that first year. Year 2 commenced in April 22 and has delivered 6.2 million, bringing the cumulative savings to 85% of target across the first 2 years. The paper details areas and reasons why we are unable to deliver the last 15% in year, but I anticipate those savings in year 3 as they're rolled forward. The refresh of the council plan last October aligned our transformation outcomes to the council's priorities for 22 to 24. It should also be noted that the council has launched a significant acceleration of the customer transformation programme, now called Future Dorset, which will drive and further align transformation activity across the council. While work has started, it is expected to accelerate as we enter year 3 and beyond, and will develop into a 7-year programme of change. The continuing transformation and Invest to Save programme will be vital for the financial stability of the council going forward. Full details are in the paper. I'd like to propose the recommendations, which has got an A and a B, which approves the transformation plan and report, and B notes the planned shift in the year 3 of the transformation plan to integrate the ambitious customer transformation, our future council plans. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Jill. Can I have a seconder for that? Andrew Parry, I think. Open up to colleagues in the chamber. Want to comment? Don't see anyone. Right, in that case, I'll come back to the Cabinet. Colleagues, comments? I was once told, that it takes 5 hours to talk about a loss and 2 minutes to talk about a profit. And I think this is an example of achievement that doesn't need a lot added to it because it says it's on the tin. And I think we should be all of us in the chamber here and others that aren't here today, should be very, very proud of what we've managed to achieve so far. Ray?
Thank you. I thought you didn't want me to speak. I agree with absolutely what you just said, Leader, and I think it's. I should have raised this during Councillor Suttle's section. We really do underestimate the amount of times we've managed to secure money. And I look at my own portfolio. When I look at the actual cost to the local taxpayer being circa a couple of £1 million, and yet we spend £100 million. All this money comes from outside sources, and I give congratulations to the teams that do this. But I think the paper that Councillor Haynes has put in front of us just highlights how many steps forward we've taken during a very, very difficult period. We tend to forget we've been through COVID and had to do a lot of work to support the local people, not least in finance, because it was finance that had to hand out all the money to those that needed it most. But I think it's, if you join the last two reports together, it creates a very good picture for this council. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Ray. Don't see anybody else indicating. So any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendation set in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Now I'm going to go on to agenda item 10, Aspire Adoption Annual Report for Dorset Council, and I initially hand over to Andrew Parry.
Thank you to the Leader for asking me to, in Councillor Quayle's absence, introduce the first of three papers from the Children's Services Directorate today. I would, of course, like to start by offering my very best wishes to Councillor Quayle and his wife on what I think will be an exciting week for them. What I did want to reflect on in the annual report for Aspire, of course, is that this is a pan-Dorset arrangement as part of a regional agency, adoption agency. It is the 6th report from Aspire that we have received. It remains a significant piece of work for us. I did want to reflect on something I read on social media over the weekend, and it was an adopter parent that we are all familiar with who posted that his teenage son had said to him, "Do you know what? I forget I am adopted." And he said that's the nicest thing he's ever heard. And that should be our aspiration for every child that we place into adoption services. And the work of Aspire goes to great lengths to ensure that is possible. Because, of course, what we never want to see, but unfortunately we do have to reflect on from time to time, is if an adoption breaks down. And I know that's handled incredibly sensitively when those do. But we've got a lot to report, and I know that we have the report's author, Alan Charlton, who is now heading up Aspire for us within the Chamber. But of course we have Paul Dempsey as the Corporate Director, who I know would like to take us through the report, if that's agreeable to you. The recommendation is for us to accept the report and the statement of purpose as it is written.
I'll seek a seconder, please. Seconded by Jill.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. My name's Paul Dempsey. As Councillor Parry said, I'm Corporate Director for Care and Protection, and part of my responsibility is to oversee Dorset's adoption service. It is a partnership arrangement with our colleagues at BCP. And one of the first things noted in the report is that following a series of interim service managers, Aspire was able to appoint a permanent service manager in October, and that is Alan Charlton, who's sitting next to me to help us go through this report. There is a lot of information in the report. I'll take you through the key activity details first. So during 2022-23, there were 25 should be placed for adoption decisions made. So 25 children had plans agreed by the agency decision maker, who, that is me, in Dorset, that they should be placed for adoption. That is an increase from 11 in the previous year, so an increase in activity there. The next stage after the plan is agreed by myself is to seek a placement order in court, which endorses that the plan should be for adoption, and there were 19 children that were made subject to placement orders in court in this last year, and that is up from 11 in the previous year. we placed 16 children for adoption in the year. That is down by 1 from 17 the previous year. And the other key activity data to report is that 26 children were adopted in the year. So their adoptions were approved by the court in 22-23, and that's up from 14 the year before. Percentage-wise, we are measured, or we take a measurement of the percentage of children who leave care, who've left care via adoption, and in the year, 16% of children that left care via adoption. That is up from 10% the year before. So that's good because we see adoption as a good permanence option for our children in care. And it's better than the national average. The national average is 10%. So we're pleased with that. We do know that as at the end of the year, March 31st, we had 10 children who had a placement order. So their plan was endorsed by the court, but they were waiting for a match with adoptive families. And only one of them was linked with a potential family at that point. We do know at that point that many of those young people were young people with needs. That means we have to strive harder to find the right adopters for them. But we can say that when we drafted the report, 7 of those 9 children had been linked with adoptive families. So that's the stage just before they go on to be matched at adoptive panel. Another key thing that we keep an eye on, measure in relation to children on their adoption journeys, is the timeliness of adoption. So we want children to have the right plan, and we want them to move through their journey to their forever family in a way that meets their needs and isn't where there isn't unnecessary delay. There are 2 key measures that we're measured on, and the government monitors, DfE monitors performance. The first one is the average number of days for children who are adopted between coming into care and moving in with their adoptive family. And for the 26 children who were adopted in the year, the average number of days between coming into care and moving in with their adoptive family was 517 days. That is an increase on the year before, where the average number of days was 314. And the national England average on that is 478 days. So we're slightly behind the national average on that timeliness measure. The second timeliness measure is the average number of days between the court granting a placement order in relation to a particular child and a match being agreed with an adoptive family. And the average number of days for us for those 26 children adopted in 22-23 was 236 days, and that is an increase from 152 days the year before. I would say that we treat timeliness figures with an element of caution. Those times are longer, but of course we secured adoption for a higher number and a higher rate of children this year, and some of those children had needs which, as I said before, meant we had to strive put additional measures in place to identify the right adopters, and sometimes that takes longer, and our primary objective really is to secure the right permanence placement for that child. And if we have to try for a bit longer and the timeliness is a bit longer, then we prioritise getting the child in the right placement over the timeliness. But we do keep reviewing that. We are Aspire are striving to recruit adopters for children with additional needs so that we can move children into adoptive placements as soon as possible. We are also striving to increase the number of children who can benefit from early permanence placements. Now, early permanence placements are an arrangement whereby children are placed with approved adopters under fostering legislation. So legislatively, you can't place children for adoption unless the child has been made subject to a placement order in court, and that only happens after a child has been through a number of social work assessments, and we as a local authority have persuaded the court that that's the right plan. So children traditionally are placed in foster care until the court agrees that it's an adoption plan, and then the child can move to an adoptive family. What early permanence placements allow us to do is to also approve the approved adopters as foster carers for a specific child, and the child can be placed as a foster child with that family on the basis that the likelihood is that the eventual plan will be adoption. If the eventual plan is adoption, the child is already with their forever family and doesn't have to have a move to a different family. So there is some element of risk for approved adopters taking that on. There isn't an element of risk for the child. It's a benefit for the child because there is potential to reduce moves for the child. So, for example, children can be placed from hospital after they've been born with their forever family and live with the same family from birth forever. So we only made 2 of those in the reporting year. So we are striving to promote that wider. Aspire are doing workshops with Dorset social workers. They've recently done some training for the judiciary about early permanence placements, which is said by Judge Simmons to have been very much appreciated. And I can tell you that we've made a number of early permanence placements in this year since the end of 2022-23. So I think our efforts at promoting that wider have been successful. Currently, 44% of our approved adopters or Aspire's approved adopters are able and willing to take early permanence placements. So that feels like a good indication that we'll make some improvements this year. Adopter recruitment is very important. We need more adopters and more adopters who are willing and able to care for children with additional needs. At the end of the year 2022-23, there were 25 adoptive families approved by Aspire waiting to be matched with children that had plans for adoption. During the year, 35 adoptive households were approved by Aspire. That's a decrease from the year before when it was 39 and a decrease from the year before that when it was 48. So Aspire are working very hard now with an improved marketing campaign to turn that around and recruit more adopters this year. Where we're not able to identify Aspire approved adopters for our children, we still want to secure adoption for them. So we can, and we do make efforts to identify suitable adopters who have been approved by other agencies around the country. And I can say that in the reporting year, we used three children were placed for adoption with families approved by other agencies. There is an exchange of money in those arrangements to cover the expenses of the agency providing the adopters in approving and supporting them. And we do likewise. So there were, I think, 7 adoptive families approved by Aspire who received or took the placements for adoption of children from other council areas. And of course, there was a transfer of expenses, money from those councils into Aspire as a regional agency. So a net gain on that transfer, so supporting our efforts financially there. Aspire also provides adoption support services for adoptive families, and also the report talks about providing special guardianship support because Aspire also, I should have mentioned this earlier, do the assessments for people that want to be special guardians for children in care. So there is adoption support services, special guardianship support services run by Aspire, the universal services that include regular newsletters, regular support groups and training events for adopters. more targeted therapeutic support is provided, and the Adoption Support Fund, which is funded by the Department for Education, is very well used by adopters and special guardians in Aspire, and 369 families benefited from the Adoption Support Fund in the reporting year, and the total funding that came in to support those 369 families from the fund was £473,000, and that has increased year on year over the last 4 years. There is a Aspire adoption panel. You'll see a section on that in the report, and they meet twice per month, and the panel approved or recommended approval of 35 adopters and recommended approval of 35 matches. The actual decision is made by the decision maker. I'm the decision maker for Dorset for matches of our children, and Alan is the decision maker for approval of adoptive parents. Birth parent support is provided. We have an agency working with Aspire called PACT, and they are commissioned to provide support to birth parents whose children have been adopted or are in the process of being adopted. The SGO assessments, Aspire undertook 81 assessments of people wishing to be special guardianships, although there were a number of those applicants who withdrew from the process, and eventually only 62 assessments were filed with the court. Just a financial note, the agency is joint funded. 49% funding is Dorset Council and 51% funding is BCP. So I think that's a quick run through of the activity. Maybe not so quick.
No, thank you very much for going through that. It's an important topic, and we need to understand what goes on. There's some good work going on there, obviously. Colleagues, any comments? Anybody in the chamber? Before I go back to Paul, and then I'll go back to the Cabinet. Paul Kimber.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this very, very comprehensive report. You mentioned about adopters and people that are coming up for want to adopt. Are we getting enough families through? I sense at times that we have struggled, and what's the position now? Thank you.
We are currently, there has been a decrease in inquiries nationally, but the inquiries are picking back up. We are hopefully at the moment aiming for a higher proportion of adopters coming through. We have a number in stage 2 of the assessment process, we have a number in stage 1, and we have a number of waiting for their initial visit. The ASG report, which is Core and Bath, which reports to the DFE on the amount of approval, well, all the adoption information, they reported that there was a 27% decrease in adopters nationally from quarter 3 21-22 to quarter 3 22-23. So there has been a decrease. What we're feeling that's about is the cost of living crisis at the moment. But I think as people are coming out of it, we saw a dip in inquiries in quarter 4, so January, February, March. We've seen an increase from May. So if we look at the amount of adopters and inquiries we're currently assessing, we're hoping to be able to assess more by the end of this year than we did last year. Is that? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question and the answer. Actually, really useful to know that. I don't see anybody else. I'm going to go back to Andrew now, and then I'll open it up to the Cabinet.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on one matter that Cabinet will be aware, of course, because we did refer to other adoption agencies, and during the course of the last year, we did see the closure of Families for Children, a voluntary adoption agency. Now, you may recall at the time there had been some concern over the care records, and I sought reassurance and received reassurance that the care records for those had been received by Aspire and had been put into secure storage.
Right, Cabinet colleagues, comments. Laura.
Thank you, Leader. I just a very quick thank you, really, for the inclusion of case studies in the report, because I think that that really brings it home to us just how important the work that you do is, and certainly brings it alive for me. So I'm really grateful to see that. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Right. It is really important topic, and thank you very much for all the work that's gone into bringing this for us today. Any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations, which is to approve the Aspire annual report and statement of purpose? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. So now move on to agenda item 11, Youth Justice Service Inspection. Andrew.
Thank you again to the Leader. The second item from Children's Services today, the Youth Justice Inspection Report. You will, of course, recall when we established Dorset Council that we saw as a priority that in the area of children's services, we would aim to deliver good and outstanding when it came to Ofsted ratings and the service delivery. And that was achieved, of course, in our significant Ofsted in 2021. But following on from that, in particular, was the wording in that report that Dorset Council is a place where good work is expected, delivered and celebrated. And we took those words to heart, and we want that message to be heard loud and clear across our partner organisations. And it certainly appears to have been the case with this wonderful report we received from the Youth Justice Service Inspection, where they did indeed achieve a good rating, a solidly good rating, and the report is significant. David Webb, who heads the service, is with us here in the chamber. He may, of course, wish to speak to this report. The recommendation is that the Cabinet notes the findings of the inspection report, including the recommendations, strengths and areas for improvement identified by inspectors, and as a result, that an action plan is in place with suitable monitoring to address inspection report recommendations. The reason for the recommendation is the Oversight Inspection Report is assured that the action plans are in place to address the report's recommendations.
Thank you, Andrew. Can I have a seconder, please? Jill, I think. Thank you very much. I'll open up to colleagues in the chamber before I bring it to Cabinet. Anybody want to comment? No? Okay, well, back to the Cabinet colleagues. I think this is Jill.
I'm going to say what you were going to say. It's really good. It's a really good news story. I think we've got children's services that we can be proud of here, and you certainly couldn't have said that a few years ago. So the fact that we've turned it round to get it to this position it's in at the moment, I think is excellent news. Really happy to support this.
I agree with that. Huge credit to everybody involved in that. So, anybody disagree with the recommendations? If not, they're carried. Right, we'll move on to agenda item 12, the Youth Justice Plan. Andrew.
Thank you. The final of the three reports today for Cabinet, the Youth Justice Plan 23-24. It is, of course, a statutory requirement for us to publish our annual Youth Justice Plan, which must provide specified information about the local provision of youth justice services. This report summarises the Youth Justice Plans for 23-24 with a full copy of the plan appended. The Youth Justice Plan needs to be approved by full council. So the recommendation for Cabinet today is that Cabinet to recommend approval of the plan to full council. Again, David Webb and Paul are here with us in the chamber to take any questions on the report.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Can I have a seconder, please? Jill. Comments in the chamber? Mike Parks.
Councillor Mike Parks, Fernand North and Chair of the People and Health Overview Committee. Recognising the importance of the work carried out by both our Overview and Scrutiny Committees, I just want to ask why this was not put forward for review by the People and Health Overview Committee, as it's been customary in the past, and if so, and it was on the forward plan for that committee.
Thank you. I'm not aware of any policy decision changes that would have required the site of Overview, but if the Chair of Overview wishes to meet with a Cabinet member, I'm sure that can be arranged.
I've got a nod of agreement on that one. Yeah, we'll have a look at it, but I don't think there's been any changes in policy I think this is here because it has to come here every year. Is that right? Broadly speaking, yeah. Okay, anybody else? Any member of the Cabinet wish to speak? So anyone disagree with the recommendation, the report? In the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Now move on to item 13, Dorset Council Plan Priorities. Jane.
Me? Yes? Thank you. Yes, thank you. And I see I'm item number 13 for my debut, so hopefully that won't be something I need to be concerned about. We've heard earlier from Councillor Haynes around the transformation work that's been going on throughout the council, and also she highlighted points within adults. So I really want to talk today about the collaborative work that Dorset Council Adults is doing with the ICS, the Integrated Care System, in shaping some of that work. So if it's right, I will go through a few of those items. So I'd like to talk about the Home First Accelerator project. And so, as we know, discharging people in a timely, safe and supported manner from hospital is one of the key challenges that the ICS is established to resolve, for all the obvious reasons. And when it goes wrong, it's a very bad experience for the individual, but it's also costly for the hospital system, with the delayed discharges, and of course for social care, with the wrong care delivery, or the wrong setting, or too high costs. The Home First programmes have been established for some time to improve these issues. I've given a bit of information on this so you can see the potential for our collaboration with the ICS to really pay some dividends. In the past few months, we've agreed a new plan to respond to winter pressures, with that aim to move us away from the annual surge of activity towards a more robust system with the right care in the right place at the right time. And you will recognise those phrases from our straplines from our commissioning strategies, so I will keep using them. We call this project the Home First Accelerator, and our NHS partners, following very productive discussions through the ICS, have made a major investment in improving reablement support, which I know has been spoken about in other forums. Officers working on this with Care Dorset, as well as delivering home care more efficiently in local zones, and trusting our provider partners to take on some of our assessment work. This is being done so people get the support they need, and they get that support quickly. The programme focuses mainly on older people coming out of hospital, and we all know the older age population in Dorset is growing. This puts in place a new therapy-led reablement service that provides rapid step-down capacity from hospital with 60 new beds across Dorset, and this will reduce delayed discharges as well as reducing the new demand for home care by around 30%. And why are we doing this? Well, we aim to increase capacity across Dorset to support the long-term care needs of residents by optimising the home care offer and providing more localised commissioning so home care businesses can be managed more effectively with an aim for a 20% capacity improvement. I would also just like to point out that there's going to be a series of meetings set up with localised areas for members to talk about what that means for them in their areas. So rather than a wide webinar, we're going to localise that because you have different providers doing different things in different areas. I think that's really important. So the start of a better deal through the ICS strategy. Well, the new strategy was agreed in April 2023. As key members of this partnership, we need to maximise its potential. And I believe that we are off to a very good start. in achieving this. And the three key priorities, which you'll hear again about, and I'll talk a little bit about that, are prevention, and that's obviously prevention, early help, thriving communities, and working better together. These are connecting strategies. So earlier this year, the Cabinet approved the new commissioning strategies, which serve as the cornerstone of our efforts to build the right care and support offer for the needs of Dorset residents within the ICS. These strategies reflect the priorities and enable us to effectively champion the cause. So the key priorities, as I mentioned, prevention and early help. So aligning perfectly with our commitment to focus on prevention as a crucial aspect in adult services. Thriving communities, which strongly reinforces our ambitions to build robust community networks that support and foster strong connections between professionals, community organisations and shared spaces. Working better together lays the groundwork for collaborative decision-making regarding service investments, targeted interventions and coordinated planning of individuals' care and support, as exemplified by the Dorset Care Record, which I had a presentation with yesterday, where Cecilia Bufton, who's the new chairman of the ICP, was also present. So again, working together and understanding what is possible together. During the first year, there's been particular emphasis placed on developing evidence, gathering data through discussions with residents, users and staff, which will support the early strategy goals of exploring key areas for co-production. Delivering these connected strategies will help use resource better in the medium term and could also open up further discussions on collaborative investments for next year, which we will always be open to having those discussions. Finally, touching on engagement, which is clearly essential, and the Voluntary and Community Sector Assembly, which is a network formed in July 2022, spearheaded by Help and Kindness, which many of you will know, have heard of, have used, and the Community Action Network that brings together all of the VCSs in Dorset, providing a platform for active participation, constructive discussions, and meaningful actions on local issues. This responds to a national requirement that has to be done for the ICS to ensure this level of engagement with our communities, and also aligns our commitment to ensure a diverse range of voices, shaping priorities and plans within the ICS. This was also funded through the ICB's investment. Dorset Council places great importance on engaging with the VCS in its co-production efforts and sees this assembly as a very valuable partner in achieving this. Another important evidence-gathering collaboration initiative with the ICS was the establishment of the 100 Conversations, where adult social care and NHS colleagues work together to engage with the very hard-to-reach individuals to understand their perspectives on health and care services they receive, with valuable insights in what needs enhancing and improving and how we might go about that. The results of these conversations will inform next stages of the statutory implementation. I will happily provide this update report, which can go into the minutes if you like, and I believe there are also some slides as well, which are available too, which might be attached. Thank you.
Very much, Jane. It's an important item we have as a standing item on our agenda. We've got 10 cabinet commitments, and this is one of them. And thank you very much for a really comprehensive overview of what's going on and the importance of, I think we all attach, if everything's a priority, then nothing is. And having those key ones that we've been focusing on, I think are showing huge results. So thank you very much for the work that everyone's done on that one. Anybody got any comments? Simon, Christopher and Laura, and then John. Paul, I mean. Go on. Simon.
Councillor Simon Christopher, Marshwood Vale Ward. Congratulations on your appointment. Many congratulations on your appointment. You didn't appear to comment on NHS England publication reference C1055. This is a particular policy that is of interest to me, and I previously discussed this, I believe, with yourself and indeed your predecessor, and indeed there's been commentary from the legal officer. This NHS publication is in respect of improving discharge of patients from hospitals with the possibility of using, where possible and at the right time of year, discharging into local hotels. Has there been any progress in respect of discharging patients from hospital into hotels at greater numbers, which is what we see elsewhere, I understand, in the West Country? So that's NHS England publication C1055, as previously discussed with your predecessor, Peter Wharf, and indeed with the legal officer. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you very much for that question. We don't need to do that, is the simple answer, because of all the work that is going on. It isn't necessary. There's sufficiency that we have through all those areas that were covered. You'll be pleased to know.
Thank you very much, and I'll be pleased to receive continued updates. Thank you.
Paul Kimber.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Paul Kimber, Portland. Thank you, Jane, for your first report, and I look forward to hearing many more. One of the concerns I have, and I expect many other councillors have, suddenly, here we are at home, and suddenly the 11th hour, the phone rings, and somebody's wanting help. Are you happy enough, and probably it's a yes already question, but can we as a council make sure that everybody everywhere has the access to information on what they're entitled to and how they can get care? I wonder if you can have a look at that. You haven't got to give me a direct answer, but it might be something you want to consider. Thank you.
Again, thank you very much for that question. It's quite a big question, actually, because I think there's an area there around communication and information and how we supply that and the various platforms that we supply it on. And it is an area that I'm aware that doesn't work as well as it could always in all areas. So it's something that's being looked at, it's being worked up as part of the wider piece of strategy work that's going on. In terms of people actually accessing the care they need, again, that is I am satisfied, but I'm not fully, and I never, one is never fully satisfied that everybody's getting exactly what they want. But the work on optimization, which I said I will be speaking to various localities about, will talk very much about how we're working with providers in a far smarter way so that people will be getting that care they need more quickly, assessed more quickly, and I'm satisfied with that work. And I look forward to speaking to you about it when we deal with your area.
I look forward to local work.
Laura.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Somper, for the update. I just wanted to offer a comment, really, just to say how pleased I am that the voluntary and community sector have that seat at the table. I think it's absolutely critical. It's working really, really well. And I know that from a health and social care perspective, it's working. But from a community's perspective, it's working as well. And to bring it all together and have it properly resourced and led, it is so important. So I just wanted to really stress that and thank Jane for mentioning it in her report.
Laura. Right, I'm going to move on to agenda item 14 now, which is portfolio holder Lee member updates. I know there are a number of updates that are in, either have been drafted or in draft, and they'll be available on the website after the meeting, as I won't dwell on that today, but it is important because I feel that it's important for the Cabinet members to give an overview of what they've been doing in the previous month, because it's important the public understand that, and equally their own members appreciate the amount of work that goes into making this council achieve its objectives in the way it does. Let's move on to agenda item 15, urgent items. There is actually one urgent item. Don't normally get urgent items, that's probably why they're urgent. It's to do with day opportunities and next steps, and that will be dealt with in exempt business. So I'd like to now move into exempt business. Can I have a proposer, please? On that basis, we're going to go into exempt business, so I'll give it a